everyone, and welcome to TberTalk. Today I have a very special friend coming to visit me. And like all great men, he is a philanthropist, a patriot, and a singer. He functions as a pop and jazz vocalist for many groups here in New England. Earlier in his life, he performed in the Air Force Band during the Gulf War. He indulges in youthful recreation, partaking in that unifying factor all over the world, children's athleticism. Please help me give a warm welcome to my good friend, Mr. Bruce Smith. Hey, how are you, Bruce?
Good day, Zach. How are you doing?
I'm doing very good, very good.
Good to see you again.
Yeah, definitely. When was the last thing we worked on together?
The last thing we worked on together was A Mile and the Night Visitors.
A Mile and the Night Visitors.
Theater production. My first time ever doing opera, so my horizons are expanding, as you see.
And let's tell the audience a little bit, what did you perform in that? Were you the baritone, the tenor, the bass? What was it?
I was the bass vocalist, King Balthazar.
King Balthazar.
Yes.
What was it like getting into character for that?
Well, it was definitely something that I hadn't expected up front, but of course, anything musically that's a challenge is something I really want to sink my teeth into, so I was mighty glad to be able to do it. You were exceptional as well, man.
Oh, no, I really appreciate that. You don't have to lie.
Not lying, you were great.
As a singer, I know you do jazz, right?
Yes.
And I always think of that as an old-time kind of thing. What is the demand for that kind of genre nowadays, and like where do you perform?
The demand for those kind of genres is going to vary from locale to locale, but remember, jazz is a ever-changing, it's a very fluid musical medium. Don't forget, jazz is the one of the original American art forms.
Really?
And yeah, the jazz started right here in the United States. It's an extension of blues, rhythm and blues, and original popular music, and has evolved. It continues to evolve to this day, with today's musicians being every bit as significant as the earliest jazz musicians, like Louis Armstrong, Duke Ellington, Cab Calloway, all of those folks. Of course, if you listen to any of the Marcelluses or any of the contemporary jazz musicians, you'll see that they have lots of things to expose to people who are just novices to music that they probably don't expect. But it's great to be able to do jazz, old and new.
Now, if you had one song out of all the jazzy songs or any of that kind of genre, what would it be?
Can't hold me to that, man. There's way too many of them to pick.
What about Kool and the Gang?
That was the Kool and the Gang is not necessarily jazz.
No.
But, well, even though they do some jazz stuff and it's mighty nice, their main forte is more pop music than anything else. But they do have an extensive jazz format that you'd be mighty pleased to be able to sink your teeth into once you get into it.
Any inspirations?
Yeah, I follow a lot of very influential both jazz and popular musicians: Nat King Cole, George Benson, Al Jarreau, those like Lou Rawls. Lou Rawls, very popular rhythm and blues / jazz artist from 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Oh yeah,
Yes,
okay.
yeah, so
Modern day?
Well, he passed away some time ago, but his influence still felt.
What's the new stuff
very
now?
heavy.
They have like Zed. He's a DJ, right? Chainsmokers, all that.
Yeah. Well, that's more popular music, and even though we do some pop music, and I'm still involved in pop music. I still play with a couple of groups that do top 40 and pop type formats for many different occasions.
Mm-hmm. So we know you're a singer, but we also know that you're part of the Air Force Band, right?
Correct.
And we like to support our veterans here on the show, but what's even more interesting than people who travel for war, right? It's people who travel for music.
Correct.
So you've had a chance to travel all over the world. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I've had a chance to entertain on 5 different continents,
Okay.
as well as our band was selected to go and perform for Desert Storm, Desert Shield, just prior to the kickoff of that campaign in the Middle East, 1990, 1991. One of the greatest trips of my life, I got to admit. Quite the experience to be able to go and play over there for our troops.
What's the terrain like over there?
Depends on where you're at. Initially, one might think that it is specifically just a lot of desert, a lot of flatlands and everything, but no, you can find all of the mountains over there that you would want to find. The climate is not necessarily dry and arid. Sometimes it can get cold and very uncomfortable, as we experienced when we went over there. It was quite the surprise for many of us, but we endured. We're
I hear
tough.
about giant spiders. Any experience with those?
No experience with any of the giant spiders, I gotta admit. Thank goodness. When I was in Texas, we did experience some scorpions, though, and that's a whole nother story.
Go ahead.
In field training, prior to my experience as an Air Force bandsman, I was in military police, and we were also air-based ground defense.
Okay.
During that situation, in order to train for being air-based ground defense personnel, we had to do out in the field training. And a couple of times we were doing overnight maneuvers, and a family of scorpions ran over my leg. That was
Yeah.
a little bit crazier experience than I expected.
Well, I think the things that unite a singer and a traveler is loneliness. Unless you travel with someone, loneliness, right?
Typically, I'm one of the bands that I'm currently playing with now is down in Newport, Rhode Island. That's 2.5 hours each way. So there's a little bit of loneliness extended in that transition, but it gives me a little bit of time to think, and you don't have to be lonely, especially nowadays. If you got your cell phone, you can call up and talk to anybody that you want. So if you're lonely, it's of your own accord, and you want to be lonely. Everybody knows what that's about.
In general, though, they say musicians need to feel some kind of sadness in order to write music. Do you have anything to weigh in on that?
I would suppose so. Most people that are musicians are entertainers. Have had to work with all kinds of different emotions. Sadness certainly being one of them. For me, I've written a few sad songs per se, but oddly enough, I've never written a song about one of the saddest chapters in my life, and that was when we divorced and I had to say goodbye to my kids.
Okay.
They were both very young at the time. My son was 10, my daughter was 7, and I just, in saying goodbye to them, I said, no, I'll be seeing you soon. That all the while never really knowing exactly when I was going to see them. They were leaving my duty station in Omaha, Nebraska,
Okay.
to move to Virginia, and I was staying in Omaha for who knew how long, because I still had time to surf. So leaving them was very, very difficult, very, very, very hard, and especially not knowing what lies ahead.
Yeah, it's uncertainty.
The uncertainty was very difficult to cope with, and clearly one of the saddest experiences of my life. I still get kind of bent out of shape just thinking about it. I'm particularly moved by the one visit that I was planning to make with my son when he came up to Boston. He still lives down in the Virginia area, and he came up to visit one of his friends. I tried to get away to meet up with him, as his visit was only 2 days. I tried to get down to see him, but I kept on running into things that I had to do, and he kept on running into events that he was going to attend with a friend that he was visiting. And with that, we never got a chance to meet up, and I could hear the disappointment in his voice. I'm certainly heard the disappointment in mine when he decided that he had to go back and leave, and we weren't going to be able to connect. So that was a very, very sad time. Hearing each other choke up, knowing we weren't going to be able to see each other, and not being able to at least spend a little bit of time with each other, very disappointing. Sadness is sadness. There's no two ways about that. And I think something like that lives with me and stays with me for quite a while.
That truly brings tears to my eyes. How old are your children now?
My son is 33. My daughter just turned 30. Good grief.
Now what's the
more
story?
children-
Yeah.
No more children under in their 20s. Boy, oh boy, the transitions. It really show you how much time moves on.
College, everything done?
College, everything done. Thank goodness they're out of college. I'm happy.
That's the most important thing, because everybody's saving up for college all the time,
Yeah, but they, of course, them being ex-students and having to take out student loans like a great many, they still have these student loans they have to deal with.
Well, how does that end? Is it a sad story?
No, as a matter of fact, as it ends, it transitions into a much brighter story. My ex And my kids, we all share the best of relationships. Of course, you know, 4 out of 5 people that you know that might have been divorced or something like that, they don't have good relationships with their exes. Me with my ex, we're fine. We're best buddies. I still go over her house. I can stay at her house, and she can come over, and she can stay at mine, and we go out to dinner, just like we're still a family unit. And I think that's really remarkable in these times.
I love to hear that. I love to hear a happy ending, you know. That's the best thing about any American story. There's always a happy ending.
It certainly is.
Definitely.
Certainly is.
You know, Bruce, you've really got a knack for telling stories. What do you think the most important part of a story is? Like, how do you grip the audience?
A lot depends on delivery and specific feel. No two situations are going to be exactly the same. When I was in the Air Force Band, we were responsible for entertaining people from all over the country, all over the world. We would get in front of kings, queens, heads of state, movie stars,
Really?
CEOs, all kinds of different people. So these situations always present themselves differently. But you have to kind of like feel that out. Do a little bit of research if you can before you go into any situation where you're trying to entertain people. And if you do that research, 9 times out of 10, you're going to come out looking pretty good.
Pretty good. What's the best kind of story, do you know?
The best kind of story is one that really moves people, and one that strikes them and shakes them like they weren't ready for it. I want to tell you about one other experience that I had when we were entertaining a group of people from Augusta, Georgia, that came to visit us in Omaha, Nebraska, at Offutt Air Force Base, and they were from Augusta, Georgia. And nobody else in our band knew. I said, guys, we have got to do some Ray Charles.
Okay.
We've got to do something by James Brown. That's James Brown's hometown.
Living in America.
Living in America. You're absolutely right. And sure enough, when we got into doing the James Brown stuff, all of these distinguished visitors that were supposed to be just there for dinner, they got up out of their seats and started dancing in the back, and it's like, oh my. And even our band, the rest of the band, they were astonished. They said, we didn't know. I said, I know you didn't know.
You woke something up, didn't you?
I knew. And we did that in the version of I Feel Good.
Oh, really?
They were happy.
Nice.
They were happy.
Can you do a little bit for us?
That's about all I'm going to give you right now.
I love it. But you know what the best kind of story is? A scary story. What do you got?
You want a scary story, huh?
I want a scary story.
Okay. Well, scary experience. Let's go back to my experience with the Air Force Band, as we had to load up a C-130 airplane with 10,000 pounds of gear, all of our duffel bags, and all of the personnel that were on the plane that were getting ready to go on this month-long tour onto a plane in the middle of December on an icy runway. We had to try to build up enough speed in order to get this heavy plane off the ground. And as we were looking out of the windows of the plane, we were saying we're not generating a whole lot of speed in order to be able to take off. So it seems like the pilot had to make a decision right at the end as to whether or not he was going to go ahead and gun it and try to get the plane off the ground and get in the air. And that's exactly what he did. So he took a shot, and fortunately I'm still standing here, so obviously we got in the air and we made the trip to Saudi Arabia, no incident.
Okay, now Bruce, I love the way you told that story. I told you that last time, but I really love that one. What do you think makes a funny story? What's the secret behind comedy? I heard someone say it was timing.
It's timing, it's positioning, it's how you situate what you're saying with who your audience is and what you're trying to get across to them. Two comedians can tell the exact same story and one get entirely different results. It's in the way you deliver, the timing in and of itself, and knowing who you're talking to and what you're going to say.
What about ironic stuff? It's a little ironic. What's that song?
I know it. Ironic? How ironic? Is that the name of it?
A little ironic, don't you think? You know what I'm talking about.
You know what's ironic? Because in this area, everyone here is really into their sports. As of course, the New England area has had so much success with the Celtics and the Red Sox and the Bruins, and of course the New England Patriots, who are going to be in the Super Bowl in a couple of days. You know what's really ironic, I think, and I got to tell you this because I'm a native New Yorker and I love my New York sports, and everyone knows that in the Brady Belichick area, the only team that the Patriots have not been able to beat in the Super Bowl are the New York Giants.
Okay.
The flip side of that is, what people forget is Bill Belichick has 2 championship rings from his time spent with the New York Giants. That is totally ironic, but still, with all of their exploits and how successful that they've been, the ultimate irony with those guys are, hey, they haven't beat the New York Giants, and Bill Belichick has proof.
Yeah, I got you.
He's got proof. I wonder what he thinks when he sees all of those championship rings that he has, and he looks at those 2 that have the New York Giants on them.
I don't know. What do you think?
I think he would rather have 2 other rings than say Patriots on them.
Exactly.
That would really put him into a stratospheric category. But sports is strange.
Ironic is like something falls on its head. No.
Not necessarily.
No.
I think it's just the peculiarness in life, in and of itself.
Yeah.
It's those little foibles that you say, you know, that is strange.
Yeah, it's strange. Yeah.
That is strange. Why is it like that? There's no telling why it's like that, but the Lord works in mysterious ways.
Does it make you angry?
Make me angry? No, man. I'm a New Yorker, born and raised.
You got a lot of anger, New
Yes.
Yorker. Yeah. I'm walking over here.
I don't have any anger. I think anger is for folks that just want to be angry. I'm a big Star Wars fan.
Yeah.
And I always listen to the words of Yoda. It says, the fear leads to distrust. Distrust leads to hate. Hate leads to the dark side. And I ain't going there. You know what I mean?
I'm your father.
Yeah.
I'm not going there. I would much rather be a happy guy.
Yeah. Well, we all wish we could be.
Besides, the force is strong with this guy right here.
Oh yeah, makes sense.
Anger is. I think anger is for lesser folks. I mean, you got to want to be angry. You got to want to be upset about things, and it has to be part of your fiber. I would rather not be angry. I would rather concentrate on things that make people happy, make you smile, something that makes you think a little bit more so.
I love that. You know, I'm not really a fan of Star Wars. I haven't seen Star Wars.
That's un-American almost.
It is un-American. Indiana Jones, haven't seen it. Well, you know, a lot of people haven't seen Rocky, you know that?
That's even more un-American.
Yeah, it is un-American. Did you see the new one?
I haven't seen the newest one yet.
Creed?
Yeah.
It was alright.
Yeah.
It was alright.
I'll get a chance to see it.
Make a second one. Alright, so on this show, we need to end it with the most important story. Okay? Now, I already told you that scary stories are the best ones.
Yeah.
That's not true. That's not true. It's not true, though.
Yes.
Everyone knows what the best story is. A romance story.
Everybody loves romance.
Everybody loves romance. What do you have?
Well, when I first moved here, I was kind of smitten by one of the first women that I met. She actually worked at an eye doctor shop whereas the lead eye doctor had a couple of buildings and had a couple of buildings for rent. And that was one of my first residences that I stayed in for about a year and a half when I moved here. And every time I went back to that eye doctor shop in order to pay my rent, I would make sure that that young lady was there when I went in to pay. If she wasn't there, I wasn't paying my rent that day.
Oh, jeez. That's devotion.
But I would go back, and after a while, she kind of got the idea, and we sustained a relationship for about 10 years, but it never really materialized into something that we both probably could have wanted to get into. It never really got there. So reluctantly, we kind of like split up the act, and I was very despondent over that, and I kept on thinking about the route to go to her building from where I lived It was about we were about a mile apart, and every time I had to go to visit her, I always had to go through that one intersection in order to get to her workplace. So, so like I said, we at least had that time, and that was probably some of the most romantic time that I spent while I've been here.
Well, we know something interesting about you. We have a music video here from the very song you wrote about this lady, about that intersection. Shall we play it? Let's play it. All right, everyone, here is The Intersection from Bruce Smith on TberTalk.
Took the exit ramp off of the highway, headed home, going home my way. Can't wait to get home. Pull up to the traffic light with heartfelt reflection. Just sitting in my car alone, thinking about you, can't call you on the phone. Somehow that just don't seem right at this intersection. So I just lift my eyes and cruise on through in a new direction. But my heart has learned to look both ways at the intersection. At the intersection. This is where I first saw your lovely face, and I dreamed of being everything to you. Why did our association have to end? Have you just lost the heart to even be my friend? Well, the light is green and I must go for my own protection. Clover leaf of love behind me at that intersection. At the intersection. At that intersection. At the intersection. Heaven knows you were my love from that first day. Oh, did I mention happy birthday, baby? So sadly I go rolling on with your last rejection. Something else left to remind me of that intersection. Well, the light is screaming off I go in a new direction. But my heart is left behind, I know, at that intersection. 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 Ooh, 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 ooh. Why you want to let baby when you know that I was right? Why you wanna make that left turn, baby, knowing I was on the right? Why'd you make a left turn, baby, when you know that I was right? Why'd you have to make that left turn, baby, knowing I was right for you? Why you wanna turn left, baby, when you know that I was right? Why you wanna make that left turn, baby, knowing I was on the right? Why'd you make a left turn, baby, when you know that I was right? Why'd you have to make that left turn, baby, knowing I was right for you? Why you wanna turn left, baby, when you know that I was right? Why you wanna make that left turn, baby, knowing I was on the right? Why'd you make a left turn, baby, when you know that I was right? Why'd you have to make that left turn, baby, knowing I was right?
Boy, oh boy, did I really love this girl. When we decided to go our separate ways, I was very, very disappointed. But being a songwriter, I decided to write a song about the route from my home to her workplace. And I always had to go through the same intersection in order to get there. Even though it was a mile apart, I always took note of that intersection. And I love that song. Makes me think of her all the time.
Well, Bruce, I want to thank you so much for coming on my show. You've been a lovely guest.
Zach, it's always my pleasure to be able to see you, my man.
Oh, definitely. Anytime, anytime.
We are definitely kings in the same order.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, we are.
Lovely, lovely, love. Inside joke, everyone who doesn't know.
Yes,
Thank you for tuning into TberTalk's very first adventure here on Manchester Public Television. We all have a story. The question is, are you willing to tell it? I took you back, brought you forward, and left you right where you were, with stories I love and hopefully you did too. I'm your host, Zakaria Tber, and I'll see you next time on TberTalk.